Keith Myers here again. Bear with me, this one is another talking video more than an action video. I hope you'll watch it, but because I think some of these concepts I need to talk about are important if you want to explore this system. The obvious question is, why the hell are you doing all this? I look at this, what we're doing with the Bowie knife, as training as a martial art, as an American martial art, a Western martial art. So I don't know if many of you are familiar with the HEMA movement. HEMA, H-E-M-A, stands for Historical European Martial Art. It's a group of great guys that got together, explored some of the old Western fencing manuals, and I'm not talking about sport fencing, I'm talking about fencing with the long sword and sword and buckler, things that go back to the Renaissance era and earlier. And they've worked now for over a decade recreating this as a martial art, so why does anybody need to learn how to use a big Bowie knife? For the same reason somebody wants to learn how to use a Western longsword. Because it's cool, it's fun to train, it's something to do. It's like we have cars today, so why does anybody need to learn how to ride a horse? Because they like riding horses, and it's a good skill to preserve, right? So I approach this as a Western martial art. Now, similarly, the guys that are doing HEMA have learned these deadly sword fighting methods. They train with sharp swords and learn how to cut with them to make sure they're doing the techniques right. And they've also developed it into a sport where they get together now, different parts all over the world, and have huge tournaments where they fight with long swords, wearing fencing masks and body armor and gloves, and these guys are really good. And so similarly, I would like to see this develop where we're training for reality. How would you really fight with this Bowie knife? But it's also going to translate into how are we going to fight when we put on sparring gear and have a friendly exchange. So this can definitely be turned into a fun and effective sparring method. And it'd be cool if enough people were doing Bowie knife training, we could get together and have tournaments. Now, Cold Steel's Lynn Thompson owns Cold Steel. He has for years had a yearly knife fighting tournament that if you learn this Bowie technique would be perfect. So you could travel to California and participate in those tournaments, and maybe we'll get to do that at some point. So again, look at this as a martial art. And the Bowie knife is mostly a dueling art compared to a self-defense art. A lot of people train Filipino martial arts and train with the tactical folders. I do as well. You have a short knife, 3 inches, less than 6 inches definitely. 3 inches is usually the legal limit you can carry. And that method is much more a self-defense method than it is a sparring method or a dueling method. They don't train to face off one-to-one with that little short knife and duke it out, right? It's more a case of you're surprised, you defend yourself until you can draw your knife from your pocket and use it to defend yourself with. That's how those kind of systems are oriented. So as a consequence, a lot of that training, the majority of that training happens at a middle range where you're already in contact with each other, because that's where self-defense is going to occur. You're not going to be standing off with the guy this way. If you can stand off with the guy in their space, hell, turn around and run. Don't engage him. Different with the Bowie knife. The Bowie knife, a lot of things we're going to be doing is going to be from long range and moving in, because it is set up like a dueling system, a sparring system. Okay? And this is historical as well. I mean, a big knife like this through history has been a backup for ages for a fighting man. So it was a combat weapon, it was a battlefield weapon, especially in the days of Jim Bowie and earlier, where they had single-shot rifles, single-shot pistols that weren't all that reliable. So if a guy's charging at you and you misfire, you better have a backup weapon ready to go. Whether it was another handgun you could pull out or a big-ass knife you could pull out. This has always been a dueling, fighting on the battlefield kind of weapon, more so than a typical self-defense and surprise weapon. And face it, unless you're Bill Bagwell, nobody's carrying around a big knife like this on a daily basis, right? So think of it as martial art. We're developing a fun, practical martial art that will eventually kind of have a sport version attached to it. Because I always think back to a saying from Filipino martial arts. I'm sure it goes way back, but I heard it from Dan Inosanto. He said, you only have a 1 in 3 chance of surviving a knife fight. If the guy's better than you, you're going to die. If you're equally skilled, you both die. If you're better than the opponent, well, then maybe you might live. So fighting with a knife is a serious undertaking. So, but I hope you enjoy training this as a martial art.